Good morning. It's Market Day Report. We're glad you're with us. We've got a big week of trade. Not only is it the final week of the month, we have a holiday coming up next Monday, and then let's throw in things like final results from the Pro Farmer Crop Tour. The national numbers are out as well. We've got a lot of headlines in the news, so let's start with the overnight trade. Corn, where did we go? Higher, up 3 1/4, old and new crop. New crop is the December. That's what's in the ground right now, 414 3/4, but fairly quiet overnight, just a 4-cent trade range. Soybeans has settled higher 3 consecutive sessions, and higher in the overnight session, up 2 at 10.60 1/2. Soy meal contracts were higher overnight, and bean oil contracts were mostly higher as well in the 55-cent trade range. Wheat market, let's start with Chicago, up 3, 507 3/4. Hard red finishing the overnight session just a tick under $5, but higher for the session. And then spring wheat, overnight mixed territory. Cotton market in the overnight session, December down 40 at 67.61. Brian Hoops, President, Midwest Market Solutions. All right, Brian, plenty to trade on this week. What are you focused on?
Hey, good morning, Tony. Well, we've kind of got the tour behind us. The market has digested all that news and put it in the rearview mirror. Bottom line was there's very high corn and soybean yield potential out there. Maybe not quite to the extent the USDA has anticipated, especially for corn, as that number was wildly above what a lot of people had anticipated. So weather here is, a little cooler, but a little bit drier as well, could curtail some of the yield potential for both corn and beans as we go into the early stages of harvest. So, the long-term seasonal patterns, or the old seasonal patterns, call for lows to be made, September, October, when you get half that crop harvested. But recently, we make that low earlier and earlier and earlier. And, last year we made a fairly early low. We may have done that in corn already. This is probably, we've seen the largest yield numbers out of the USDA. Could certainly have some harvest pressure that puts some price pressure against us. But right now, markets have seen some short covering, and that probably will continue. Now, in the case of the wheat, we haven't seen a lot of that short covering. That market, knows its supply situation already. It knows where we're at as far as demand. We're not really changing ending stocks appreciably, but we are starting to seed the winter wheat crop, or at least we'll be thinking about seeding it here in several weeks. There's good rains in the forecast for the plains, parts of Kansas and Oklahoma getting rains already this morning. A little too early to say it's really going to help the crop, but it really helps that seed bed soften up, and it's been pretty dry this summer. Very hot, very dry. It's very hard ground, and so this really will help that out and give us a better start to the planting and seeding process for the spring, or for the winter wheat, I should say. So no export sale announcements this morning, but we do expect to see another strong week of export sales on Thursday for the corn market, because we had such a strong week of export business last week.
Okay, we're getting the market day started. Brian Hoops is with Midwest Market Solutions. Hang on, we're back in a moment with more Market Day Report. Cash trade in the South, 237 to 245, but really most of it done in that 240 range. And then in the North, 245 to 246. Saw dressed at 385 to 392. So that's the cash trade. Now let's go over to live cattle, and this is how we finished before the cattle on feed report, which came out on Friday afternoon. And also before we heard the news about New World screwworm and a case in a human. So, like 12 higher, 239.77 on the August. October up 310, 237.82. Then over to the feeders. By the way, both of these markets up 5 consecutive sessions. That 363 on the September, new all-time high there, settled at 362.72, up 470. And finally over to the hogs, settled higher on Friday, 2 straight sessions in positive territory. Brian Hoops is with Midwest Market Solutions. We have no shortage of headlines here.
A lot of things to talk about in the livestock markets. You mentioned briefly on a lot of those. Cattle and feed report, look at that first of all. A little bit negative compared to expectations, but longer term, it's very positive. Our supplies are at 8-year lows. Our placement numbers are at 9-year lows. We don't expect they're going to change those numbers anytime soon. So our numbers are going to remain very tight, and that's from the bullish standpoint. Now, you also had cash cattle trade that was bullish last week, 240 in the Southern Plains, $3 to $5 better than the previous week's trade. That certainly is friendly. I think we had dialed in a lot of that on Friday's rally. We rallied August almost to 238, so we're pretty close to being on par with that cash trade from last week. The negative here, of course, you look at the box beef has rallied sharply over the last 3 weeks. We were up almost $16 last week in the select and $14 in the choice. A lot of that has to do with Labor Day buying, and that Labor Day, a week from today, a lot of this buying has probably been completed or is very close to being completed. So I think those boxes will probably start to slip a little bit. Now, we may be getting a little bit too rich of a premium, and especially in these feeder cattle, we're $10 futures over the index. Now, that index does come up seemingly almost every day because of strong cash sales, but it does have to align by Thursday. So you would think that August would come down, maybe the index comes up a little bit, but a $10 premium usually equates to some selling. So I'm going to look for cattle to open lower here this morning, just off of all the news items that we've talked about. And we haven't even touched on the cold storage numbers that came out Friday as well. Pork stocks were down 3% from a month ago and 11% from last year. Could be kind of friendly for that market, I think.
All right, Brian Hoops, Midwest Market Solutions. Let's go over to the equities, and quickly we'll touch on the Dow, the NASDAQ, and the S&P. And the reason we're looking over at these is because, well, Jerome Powell speaking at Jackson Hole on Friday, and the markets really liked what he said. But in the overnight session, Dow many futures in the red. NASDAQ, well, we're watching it move in the red. And just before the open, the S&P trading in the red as well.
Interesting. All right. Can't wait for the markets to open.